Today we're going deep into a pretty fascinating idea from the spiritual seek. The whole fourth dimension of psychology thing.
Yeah, it's a perspective that kind of brings together modern physics and ancient spiritual texts.
A bit of a head scratcher.
Yeah, it can be.
But I think our listeners are really going to find it thought-provoking.
I think so too. The source material suggests that our typical way of thinking, which it labels three-dimensional thinking,
Right.
might be what's holding us back from really understanding reality.
So let's break this down a bit. What
Let's do-
exactly are we talking about when we say 3D thinking?
Well, it refers to how we tend to see the world, through the lens of space-time and conventional logic.
Okay, I can see that.
Like we use our senses to experience length, breadth, height, that sort of thing.
Right. We perceive separate objects in space and time as a straight line.
Exactly.
So this 3D thinking, it's not just how we understand the physical world, right? It also shapes how we approach bigger concepts like ethics and logic.
Absolutely.
Oh.
For example, we tend to assume that 2 + 5 will always equal 7. Or if you drop something, it'll fall to the ground.
Makes sense. Those are kind of like the givens of our everyday experience. Right?
Yeah, the foundation for how we reason.
But then, the spiritual seek argues that even modern physics, like Einstein's theory of relativity, is challenging these givens.
Precisely, relativity shows us that time and space aren't absolute, but relative to the observer.
So that whole thing about parallel lines meeting in curved space-time.
Exactly, or time slowing down at super high speeds. These concepts completely warp our common sense understanding of the universe.
Yeah, those are definitely things that make you stop and think.
For sure.
The source used the example of observing a clock from a spaceship traveling at the speed of light.
Right.
So from the perspective of someone on the spaceship, time would seem to flow normally, but someone watching from Earth would see the clock on the spaceship ticking much slower.
Exactly. And that's because the passage of time isn't constant, but is influenced by the observer's relative motion and the gravitational field they are in.
Okay, so if we have to stretch our understanding of physics that much, what does it mean for other areas of knowledge, like ethics or spirituality?
That's where this fourth dimension of psychology comes in.
Yeah.
The spiritual seek suggests that statements from spiritual texts that seem paradoxical, like the ones in the Bhagavad Gita, might actually make more sense if we could tap into a higher level of consciousness.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Can you give us an example of one of those paradoxical statements?
Sure. The Bhagavad Gita says, surrendering to a higher power can eliminate all sins. Now, from a 3D thinking perspective,
Right.
that might seem illogical.
Yeah. How can just surrendering erase past actions? It doesn't really fit with our usual understanding of cause and effect, where actions have consequences that can't just be wiped away.
Exactly. However, the spiritual seek proposes that these statements that seem paradoxical might actually make more sense if we consider them in the context of a fourth dimension of psychology, a dimension where the limitations of 3D thinking no longer apply.
So you're saying there's a whole other way of perceiving reality with its own set of rules.
That's the idea. And this other way of perceiving reality might be accessible through practices that many spiritual traditions emphasize, like meditation or contemplation.
So those practices, they're like tools for shifting our consciousness beyond the limits of 3D thinking so we can understand reality on a deeper level.
It's a compelling thought. The spiritual seek also uses the analogy of the dream state and waking reality to explain this point.
Okay, so in dreams, logic doesn't really apply the same way it does when we're awake. One thing can morph into another, and events happen in ways that don't make sense in our waking world.
Precisely. It's like our dream logic operates on a different set of rules.
And maybe our waking consciousness is like a dream compared to this fourth dimension of psychology.
Exactly. And the spiritual seek even hints at what this shift in consciousness might feel like using vivid imagery, like light flashing from every atom of space.
That definitely paints a picture of a profound and transformative experience.
It does.
The spiritual seek also talks about how 3D thinking limits our understanding of ethics, giving examples from Hindu scriptures.
Right, like the actions of Krishna in the Mahabharata.
Could you expand on those examples a little?
Sure. So Krishna, his decisions and strategies often seem morally ambiguous when viewed through our conventional ideas of right and wrong.
Because sometimes he uses deception or bends the rules of warfare to achieve what he sees as a greater good.
Exactly, actions that would normally be condemned in most societies.
And this is where the idea of a frame of reference becomes important, not just in physics, but also in ethics.
Right. The spiritual seek suggests that our sense of what is right and wrong could actually be relative to our frame of reference of consciousness.
Meaning the beliefs and experiences that shape our judgments.
Precisely. So what seems ethical in one context might not be in another, similar to how physical laws can behave differently at the subatomic level compared to our everyday world.
So our ideas of what's morally absolute might be more fluid than we realize.
Exactly. The spiritual seek argues that our ethical judgments might be bound by 3D thinking, and as our consciousness expands, our understanding of right and wrong could evolve too.
That's a really thought-provoking concept. It suggests that our ethical perspectives have the potential to evolve as our consciousness grows.
It does. The spiritual seek also points out how this idea of a fourth dimension of psychology challenges how we understand logic, especially the link between cause and effect.
Right, we tend to believe that every action has a predictable and isolated consequence.
Yeah, but the source argues that this might be an oversimplification.
It's like we're trying to understand a huge web of relationships, but we're only looking at individual threads.
Exactly. We miss the bigger picture because we are so focused on this linear cause and effect mindset.
The spiritual seek quotes philosopher Alfred North Whitehead, who believed that the idea of a clear separation between cause and effect is a prejudice of the human mind.
Right. In reality, things might be far more interconnected and interwoven than we can currently perceive.
So what you're saying is that our current understanding of logic might just be a product of our 3D thinking, and that a fourth-dimensional perspective could reveal a much more complex and interconnected reality.
That's a key takeaway. And there are examples from various spiritual teachings that support this idea, like the concept from the Bhagavad Gita, that focusing on one aspect of spiritual practice can lead to progress in all areas.
Right, or the Christian teaching that seeking the kingdom of God brings fulfillment in all aspects of life.
Exactly. These concepts point to a level of interconnectedness that goes beyond our typical way of thinking.
So could this interconnectedness be another characteristic of this fourth dimension of psychology?
It's definitely a possibility worth exploring. The spiritual seek uses that dream analogy again to illustrate this point.
Right. In dreams, logic often takes a back seat. One thing can transform into another, and events unfold in ways that defy our waking understanding of cause and effect.
Exactly.
So maybe our current state of consciousness is like a dream compared to this fourth dimension of psychology, and the laws of logic as we understand them are just the rules of this particular dream.
That's right. And the spiritual seek goes on to give some really interesting examples of how our 3D thinking might be limiting our understanding of spiritual teachings, like the concept of God existing beyond space and time.
That's an idea that's hard to grasp from our usual perspective.
It is. The spiritual seek also mentions the idea that sins can be forgiven or even erased through spiritual practices, which challenges our typical notions of karma and the consequences of our actions.
Right, and it even suggests that the past might be accessible or even changeable in different states of consciousness, which completely flips our linear understanding of time on its head.
It does.
This is a lot to take in. It seems like our current way of thinking might be a very limited window into the true nature of reality.
It might be. But as we delve deeper into this concept of a fourth dimension of psychology, I think you'll find that it opens up some truly fascinating possibilities.
I'm looking forward to exploring those possibilities further.
We've been talking about this idea of a fourth dimension of psychology, a way of perceiving reality that goes beyond our typical 3D thinking. But what does that actually mean for us, in our everyday lives? How can we actually apply this concept to our own experiences and challenges?
That's a really good question. It's one thing to talk about these abstract ideas like higher dimensions and expanded consciousness.
Right.
But how do we actually bridge the gap between those ideas and the reality of our lives?
I think one key takeaway is the importance of perspective. The spiritual seek really emphasizes how our 3D thinking can trap us in rigid ways of seeing the world, and that leads to misunderstandings, conflicts, and a sense of limitation.
It's like we're only seeing a small part of the picture.
Right.
We're missing out on the richness and complexity that a broader perspective might reveal.
Exactly. The spiritual seek suggests that by recognizing the limits of our current perspective and understanding that it's just one viewpoint among many, we can start to break free from those self-imposed constraints.
So it's about being humble, recognizing that we don't have all the answers and that our way of seeing things might not be the only way or even the best way.
Exactly. And this ties back to the idea of relativity, not just in physics, but also in how we perceive and judge the world. Just as time and space are relative to the observer, so are our perceptions, beliefs, and judgments. What seems absolutely true from one perspective might appear completely different from another.
So there's always room to grow, to expand our understanding, and to see things in new ways.
Absolutely. And this openness to different perspectives, even those that might initially seem strange or challenging, is crucial for accessing this fourth dimension of psychology. It's about moving beyond the limitations of our 3D thinking and embracing a more expansive and fluid way of perceiving reality.
How do we actually cultivate this openness and expanded awareness in a practical way? The spiritual seek mentions things like meditation and contemplation. But are there other ways to tap into this fourth dimension?
I think any practice that helps quiet the mind and detach from our usual thought patterns can be beneficial. Meditation is a powerful tool for training ourselves to observe thoughts and emotions without judgment, which creates space for new insights and perspectives.
It's like taking a step back from all the mental chatter and observing things from a more spacious and objective place.
Exactly. Contemplation, as the spiritual seek describes it, is deep reflection on profound truths and concepts. It's about engaging with ideas that challenge our habitual ways of thinking and push us to expand our mental and spiritual horizons.
So it's about actively seeking out new perspectives and ways of understanding the world. Maybe by reading thought-provoking books, having meaningful conversations, or exposing ourselves to different cultures and belief systems.
Exactly. And it's important to acknowledge that this process of expanding our consciousness isn't always easy or comfortable. The spiritual seek actually mentions how this fourth dimension of psychology can be a kind of terror to our usual ways of living and thinking.
Because it challenges our deeply held beliefs and assumptions, right? It shakes the very foundation of our understanding of the world.
Precisely. It can be unsettling, but it can also be incredibly liberating. As we let go of rigid ways of seeing the world and open ourselves to new possibilities, we might experience a sense of freedom and expansiveness that we never thought possible.
It's like breaking free from a self-imposed prison and stepping into a vast, uncharted territory full of wonder and potential.
That's a great way to put it. And the spiritual seek uses vivid imagery to describe the shift in consciousness, talking about light flashing from every atom of space and the world seeming to be flooded with suns glowing with incandescent orbs.
It sounds like a truly transformative experience that changes how we see ourselves and the world around us in a fundamental way. But how does this personal transformation connect to the larger world?
The spiritual seek suggests that this transformation is not just about personal enlightenment, but also about creating a more just and compassionate world.
So as we expand our consciousness and develop greater empathy and understanding, we naturally become more compassionate and caring in how we interact with others.
Exactly. The spiritual seek highlights how this fourth dimension of psychology can help us overcome some of the limitations of our current ethical systems. It suggests that our sense of right and wrong, which is often based on rigid rules and judgments, might actually evolve as our consciousness expands.
So instead of being bound by a fixed set of moral principles, we might develop more nuanced and compassionate understanding of ethical behavior.
Exactly. And this expanded ethical awareness can have a significant impact on how we approach things like conflict resolution, social justice, and our responsibility to care for the planet and all its inhabitants.
It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of all things, understanding that our actions have far-reaching consequences and acting in ways that promote the well-being of all beings.
That brings us back to the concept of unity, which the spiritual seek emphasizes throughout. This fourth dimension of psychology isn't just about individual awakening, but also about recognizing our interconnectedness with all of existence.
It's about seeing ourselves as part of a larger whole, a cosmic dance where every being plays a vital role.
Exactly. And this sense of unity, this understanding of our interconnectedness, can be a powerful force for positive change in the world. It can inspire us to work together to create a more just, compassionate, and sustainable future for everyone.
So it's about moving beyond the limitations of our egocentric perspective and embracing a more expansive and inclusive way of being in the world.
Precisely. This shift in consciousness, this expansion of awareness, isn't something that happens overnight. It's a journey, a process of ongoing growth and transformation.
It takes dedication, perseverance, and a willingness to challenge our most deeply held beliefs and assumptions.
It does. But the rewards, as the spiritual seek suggests, are immeasurable. The possibility of experiencing a fourth dimension of psychology, of tapping into the boundless potential of our consciousness, is a journey worth embarking on.
A journey that can lead to a profound sense of purpose, meaning, and connection, both within ourselves and with the world around us.
Exactly. It's a journey that can ultimately help us create a more enlightened, compassionate, and harmonious world for everyone.
It's an inspiring vision to think that by expanding our consciousness and embracing a new way of seeing reality, we can not only transform our own lives, but also contribute to the evolution of humanity as a whole.
It is, and it's a vision that reminds us that we're not just passive observers of the world, but active participants in the ongoing creation of reality. We have the power to shape the future, both individually and collectively, through the choices we make and the actions we take.
That's a powerful reminder, especially in times of uncertainty and challenge. It's a reminder that even when things are tough, we have the potential to create positive change and make a difference in the world.
And that potential is within each and every one of us waiting to be unlocked through the power of our own consciousness.
As we continue to explore this concept of a fourth dimension of psychology, I encourage everyone listening to think about what it means to them. What possibilities does it open up in your own life? What steps, even small ones, can you take to start exploring this uncharted territory within yourself?
Remember, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, and the potential for profound transformation is within all of us. So as we wrap up our deep dive into this fourth dimension of psychology, it's really clear that this concept challenges our usual ways of thinking, and it opens up some really interesting possibilities.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating journey, exploring those limitations of our 3D thinking and considering what it might mean to tap into a higher level of consciousness.
The spiritual Sikh uses the analogy of waking up from a dream to describe this shift in consciousness. And just like waking up from a dream, this transition might feel a little disorienting at first.
Yeah, it's like when you first wake up from a dream, you kind of want to hold on to those familiar images and feelings from the dream world, even though they don't make sense anymore.
Right. It takes a moment to adjust to the new reality and get your bearings in the waking world. Maybe the shift to a fourth dimension of psychology is similar. It might require us to let go of those beliefs and assumptions that we've always held on to.
Even questioning everything we thought we knew about ourselves and the nature of reality.
It can be daunting, but also incredibly liberating. The spiritual Sikh describes the shift in consciousness as a moment of profound awakening, a state of freedom from ignorance and limitation.
It's not just about personal liberation, though, right? It's also about recognizing our interconnectedness with everything.
Right. It's about moving past that illusion of separation and experiencing the unity that connects all of existence.
The spiritual Sikh uses the image of a cosmic dance to describe this unity, where everything is reflected in everything else and there's no separation between subject and object, cause and effect.
It's a beautiful image. It paints a picture of profound harmony, a state of being where everything is seen as part of an interconnected web of life.
And while that might sound like some far-off ideal, the spiritual Sikh suggests it's a reality that's available to all of us.
It's not about becoming something we're not, but rather uncovering our true nature, the boundless consciousness that's at the heart of who we are.
The spiritual Sikh talks about practices like meditation and contemplation as ways to cultivate that inward focus, to quiet the mind and make space for deeper understanding.
Right, but I think it goes beyond specific techniques. It's about cultivating curiosity, a willingness to question, and a desire to explore the unknown.
Approaching life with a sense of wonder, with an open heart and an open mind.
Exactly, because ultimately this fourth dimension of psychology isn't a destination, it's a journey. A process of constant growth, expansion, and transformation.
And it's a journey we can all embark on, regardless of our background beliefs or experiences. As we wrap up, I'd like to invite everyone listening to consider what this fourth dimension of psychology means to them. What possibilities does it open up in your life? What steps, even small ones, can you take to start exploring this uncharted territory within yourself?
Remember, even the longest journey begins with a single step. And the potential for incredible transformation lies within each and every one of us.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fourth dimension of psychology. We hope this exploration has sparked your curiosity and given you new ways to see yourselves and the world around you.